Hello and welcome to Penny for a Tale. My name is Mitchell, and boy, oh boy, do we have a special night for you this Halloween week. It's going to be an amazing night of storytelling, of dastardly murders, horrific creatures in the dark. If you've ever been on this channel before, you know how it goes. But we have some amazing guests, cast members, etc., and creatures from the deep that will surely grace us tonight for this amazing night. Super excited. So yeah, without further gilding the lily, but right before that, let me tell you about Larped, which is one of my favorite groups that will also be participating in this endeavor tonight. Larped is a group of friends who got together and attend events together. They have a website, Facebook group that all this information can be found online right here in the YouTube details, etc., as well as larped.com for more infos. They do reviews on garb, boffer weapons, anything to do with LARP, you most likely will find it over there. So yeah, without further gilding the lily, let me introduce you to our amazing host.
Hello there. We have some cursed tales tonight that these storytellers will sap you away with tales of terror. Grab a drink and a meal. It could be your last. Our first story is Tristan with Larped.
Hello there, you travelers, listeners, and fellow tale spinners out there in the world beyond the pages. How are you tonight? Well, I hope. Is your seating comfortable? I would offer you some warm refreshments on such a cold night, but alas, not but my voice can reach you. Bah, what am I thinking? You've not come for my hospitality. You are here for a tale, yes? Well then, allow me to welcome you to my humble collection. Welcome all to the menagerie of horrors. Hmm, but which tale to tell? Perhaps you would like to hear of the pale listener, or perhaps of the cavern stalker. No. Ah, here. Here is the one for tonight. Terror of the Groaning Woods is the name of the tale I shall spin for you tonight. Please sit back and enjoy, if you can. There are places in this world yet untouched by the hands of man. There are places that are corrupted by the greed and evil deeds of them. And then there are places that reach out and touch us all on their own. I find that these places are by far the most interesting and oftentimes the most terrifying of all. It began as a simple road trip. Jason stared out the window, watching the woodland race by. Dane, his brother, and Alice, Dane's girlfriend, were in the front. Days they had spent on the road, occasionally stopping at motels, but more often than not, sleeping in the car. They planned this trip as a way to escape from the monotony of everyday life, to find and see the hidden gems of the countryside. They would need to stop for fuel soon, but with no signs and night approaching, Jason began to worry that they would be stranded out there. Then, like a God-sent miracle, a sign appeared ahead. Groaning Woods, next right. The exit they saw, however, was hardly more than a dirt path. Dane grumbled about the roughness of the trail as the small band bumped and rumbled down towards their new destination. as they ventured along the path, only grew more and more narrow and overgrown. Then, when it seemed like they would have to abandon the car to proceed, the path began to widen and clear. Before them, they saw a quaint, sleepy little town. Dingy, flickering yellow lamps lit the cracked pavement every couple of yards. Night had fallen fully as they rolled up to the gas station on fumes. It was an old-fashioned station with a single pump. One might say outdated. Dane parks the car next to the pump and exits. Jason begins to feel a sense of unease about this place. Something was not right here, but he could not place what it was. Dane returned after a few minutes, swearing under his breath. Sign says they're closed for the night, and the pump's all chained up. Looks like we're staying put for the night, he said. Alice sighed and fiddled with her phone, trying to find a signal with little success. Jason decided to get out and stretch his legs. He opened the door and stood, finding himself face to face with it. It stank of decay, its skinless body wrapped in some degree with yellow, dirty bandages, teeth exposed in a permanent smile. It hunched over to stare into Jason's eyes. Its own sockets were empty as the void. He stood there stunned for a moment. For a moment, the two stood there motionless. The stillness was broken by the creature. It giggled in the voice of a young girl and grabbed at Jason with long, gnarled fingers. Jason was scooped up off the ground. Then, a gunshot, and the horror cried out. Jason felt himself floating for a moment, then felt a sharp pain as he hit something hard. As his consciousness began to fade, he watched and heard what happened next. Dane had in his hand the gun he kept in the glove compartment. He unloaded the clip into the beast to no avail. Alice was screaming the entire time from the inside of the car. The last thing Jason saw before darkness took him was the sight of the creature ripping Dane in two. When he came to, he was strapped to a chair. It was dark, almost too dark to make out his surrounding. The sounds of whispers permeated the air, along with another sound, a wet smacking. Then he noticed it. Over across the room, hunched over another chair. It paused. Glancing over its shoulder, it noticed him. It stood to its full height. The horror's head brushed the ceiling. Jason saw what was in the other chair. It was Alice. Her jaw hung loose, her skin pale, and her eyes lifeless. Now it was his turn. The horror crouched before him and stared, and stared, and stared. Then it spoke. Please, please don't come over here. Don't touch me, it sobbed. Jason's eyes widened in surprise. That was Alice's voice. The creature began to cycle through other voices, tens, hundreds, thousands, till the voice he dreaded most to hear spoke to him. I'm sorry, bro, whispered Dane. There was a gurgling sound that followed. Jason looked at the beast, and it looked at him in turn. He could only think of one thing to say to it. Fuck you. He swore that it smiled even wider than its skinless mouth would allow it to. Then it embraced him, placed its face to his, and pulled him into a kiss. Something entered his mouth, reaching deep down into his throat. He heard the crack of his jaw dislocating, then felt the pain that followed.
And that is why you should always plan a route before taking your next road trip. Next, we have a tale about the Maelstrom Mansion by Flamma Mysteries.
Flamma Mysteries presents A Tale from Maelstrom Mansion. Our story begins on a cold and stormy night, just as most of the Dark Tales do. It is 1906, and our star is Catherine Montgomery, the second wife of the infamous Myron Montgomery, one of the wealthiest men in the country. Misfortune may have befallen the last Lady Montgomery, and the Lady Montgomery a generation before her, but Catherine had no qualms marrying a man twice her age when marrying someone so elusive and so eccentric had also gifted her such a gorgeous mansion.
Have you come for the nightcap you promised me?
Indeed, my dear. I'm certain you had thought I had forgotten. Forgive me for the late hours. Cheers?
Taking the book that she had been reading in the warmth of her bed, Myron handed his wife one of the Murano crystal glasses he had bought her on their last trip to Venice. He gently clicked them together, sending a ringing throughout the bedroom.
And what's the occasion?
Can't I just have a drink with my wife?
Of course, it's just that it's rare you bring out this decanter. You always say it's for special occasions.
Any occasion with you is special, my dear. Now, drink up. I'll be along shortly. I just have some business to finish before the night is over.
Myron leaned over and gave his wife a kiss on the forehead. He gulped down the rest of his own drink with a sound of satisfaction and smiled as he set it on the nightstand. Catherine returned the smile and watched as he stood and left the room, shutting the door behind him.
Surely he knows how terrible this tastes. Blah. No, thank you. I do not care how expensive it may be.
Catherine reached over and poured the liquid into an already dying houseplant. She did not want to offend her dear husband, but she would not drink the foul liquor. Instead, she retrieved the book that Myron had taken from her and settled in to resume her reading. She had finished the chapter just as the cold chill crept in through the room.
This storm has brought in the cold, and the fire is dying. That simply won't do. Where are those servants? They should have been by to stoke the fire by now. I'll do it myself, I suppose, and give them a stern talking to in the morning.
Catherine left the safety of her blankets and slid on her night slippers. She rounded the bed to the fire, only to find that they were out of firewood.
Well, of course this would happen. I simply cannot sleep in this cold. I suppose I'm waking someone up.
Catherine took her robe off the hook next to the door and pulled it on, tying it tightly at her waist. With a sigh, she stepped out of her room in search of someone to retrieve her more firewood. The mansion was quiet. Far too quiet. Where were those servants? Even the night shift were not to be stirring. Catherine continued onwards, catching the sound of Myron's voice, the only sound in the entire household. She silently made her way down the first few steps of the grand staircase before she crouched down, hiding in the shadows. Catherine peered out through the banister spokes, grasping onto the carved wood at either side of her head. Myron was in the foyer, standing in front of the large entryway fireplace, which was roaring with life on such a cold evening. He had one hand in his pocket, with the other resting on the stone mantel that housed his hunting rifle, and, on this night, an ornate dagger. In front of Myron, there was a stone basin filled with some sort of dark liquid. It was so dark that Catherine swore it absorbed the light from the fire. Myron appeared to be looking into it and speaking in some sort of strange language.
The guess, the go for the gate with the gun. The guy with the go, the gauge, the go, the gun with the hand, the gun for the guy, do the goo, with the guess, the go for the guess, the go, the guy, the goo, do the geese, the guy, the girl.
There was movement from the corner of her eye, causing Catherine to nearly jump. However, it was only one of the servants, the feeble, elderly butler named Henry.
Bring her in, Asmazoth.
Asmazoth.
Yes, my master, Montgomery.
Catherine hurried to cover her mouth to hide her audible startlement. The kindly butler, whom she had grown to know so well, did not sound like himself. He hardly sounded human at all. Henry disappeared from Catherine's sight, presumably into the back stairwell. After only a few moments, she could hear a muffled female voice.
Help! Help! Let me go!
Dorothy, why does Henry have the poor housemaid bound and gagged? What horrible thing is Myron doing?
There's no need to be frightened, dear girl. You have been chosen for quite the honor. Now don't bother screaming. No one will hear you. We made sure that they are all sleeping quite soundly.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for whatever I did. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. I'll dust better. I'll use more bleach on the sheets, please. I'm sorry. Don't hurt me.
It's always the same. It's very tiring, you know. Just be quiet and accept the gift the Great One has chosen to bestow upon you. Asmazoth.
Yes, my master.
With great strength that should not have been possible for such a decrepit old man, Henry scooped Dorothy up from the ground where he dropped her. In one swift movement, he set her on the table that had been placed in front of both the fire and the strange stone basin. Henry held her down in place.
Oh, let me go!
Myron took the ornate, almost ceremonial dagger from the mantel and dipped it into the dark liquid that filled the basin. He withdrew it and held it over Dorothy, letting a few droplets fall into her mouth. The girl's scream stopped instantly, and her jaw hung open.
By our pact, I pay the price.
I offer you this sacrifice. Take her soul as I take this knife. Consume and feed upon her life. And with the power there imbued, our family pact again renewed. Now with this blood I freely bleed. Come unto me and do the deed.
Finglui magwanagaf Cthulhu Harie Waganagal Fatagan.
Myron's head shot back, and Catherine could see that the whites of his eyes had vanished, leaving behind only a glossy darkness. Myron's body went rigid as a sickening gurgling came from his mouth. A similar sound escaped from Henry, drawing Catherine's eyes away from her husband and to the other two servants. A black fog crept out of the basin of water in front of the fireplace and poured into Dorothy's mouth. Silent tears fell from her eyes, but she could not move, she could not make a sound. The sight of the poor girl was enough to shake Catherine from her own stupor. Gathering her resolve, she gripped the hem of her nightgown and flew down the remaining stairs. Neither Myron nor Henry moved as she approached. In fact, they did not see her.
As soon as you are unbound, run. Leave this house and never come back.
Catherine struggled with the ties and finally braved wresting the ceremonial dagger from Myron's hands. Still, he did not seem to see her. Catherine cut the ropes and used all of her might to hoist Dorothy from the table. As soon as she was standing, the dark fog started to dissipate and Dorothy let out a cough.
Thank you. That fog, it was alive. I could feel it.
There is no time. I said run!
Catherine dragged Dorothy to the front door and quickly unfastened the locks. From behind her, there was a loud thud. Myron and Henry had both fallen to the ground.
Open, damn you! Dorothy, help me!
Though unlocked, the heavy door was uneager to move. It took both of them to force it open. Dorothy managed to slip through the crack, but it shut on Catherine.
Run, girl, run! Get far away from here.
Catherine, what have you done?
Go!
Dorothy turned from the front door and fled into the stormy night, putting as much distance as she could between her and the dreaded Montgomery mansion.
You should not have done that, Catherine.
Catherine turned away from the door and ran across the foyer, heading for the back stairwell, dodging the displaced furniture that littered the way. Down she went, trying the back door.
No, not you two. What is wrong with this house?
Catherine, there's no point in running. They won't let you leave now.
You're insane!
She stormed up the stairs again in hopes of trying the front door once more, but Myron was there, waiting for her. He grabbed her by the arms and started to pull her through the doorway.
There must be a sacrifice.
Let go of me!
Ah!
Catherine flailed until her fingers found Myron's eyes. She freed herself and continued upstairs to the next floor. She had nowhere to go. There was only one place that she could seek refuge, the chapel. In she went, barricading the doors behind her. Catherine collapsed to the floor and prayed.
Please, Lord, protect me from my husband and the evil inside of him, inside of this house. Take me into your arms and... Please, Lord, protect me.
The banging stopped, and Catherine was left in silence, listening to her own sobs and the sound of the rain pounding against the stained glass. Had he left her? Was she safe? The door broke open.
Go to hell, you demon!
I'm going somewhere, but it isn't to hell. And so are you. The Great One demands it.
As Myron stepped into the room, Catherine could see that he had his shotgun.
No, please, no, dear God!
You ruined everything, Catherine. It's up to Mortimer to fix what you have done.
The following morning, the storm had cleared.
Extra, read all about it. Myron Montgomery kills his wife and commits suicide. Mortimer Montgomery now sole heir to the Montgomery family fortune and so-called Maelstrom Mansion.
And that is why you should never go to the Maelstrom Mansion. Next, we have a story by Natasha from Hanging Lantern.
And enjoy. Yvonne and Martina started their senior year inseparable and full of hope. They anticipated leaving the town in which they both grew up in and embarking on the next steps of their career path. Martina dreamed of becoming a surgeon, but her passionate demeanor threatened to delay that dream. Surgeons were meant to be measured, controlled people with their minds always on their work and their hands sure and steady. Yvonne's chosen field was the study of animal behavior, and she often joked that Martina provided her with ample opportunities to practice her craft. Their general good cheer and optimism this time of year stood out against the backdrop of the melancholy place still surrounding them for the time being. The town of Applewood rested its tired bones against the bedrock of the Appalachian Mountains. The people and trees both seemed bent under the weight of memories. The streets stood wide and empty, with only a few people darting around in errands during the course of each day. Yvonne and Martina counted the days until they could be rid of this place, sharing their plans only with Amanda and Justin, their best friends for many years. Amanda was Yvonne's sister, who was happy enough to stay in Applewood and didn't really understand why the other two wanted to leave so much. She had an old soul, as they say, wore a lot of crystal jewelry, burned sage, attended church, and believed in otherworldly presences. Justin was the girl's trusted confidant, after he tolerated 3 years of merciless teasing for being best friends with 3 women, 2 of whom were in a relationship with each other, and none of whom were in a relationship with him. On this particularly beautiful and crisp fall day, the 4 of them were quite happy, thinking about the approaching winter and the holidays that would come soon. Justin proposed they go explore the old subway tunnels under the town as a lark for Halloween, as the majority of teenagers did at one point or another during their lives in Applewood. The town police has given up on keeping them out, with every wall, barrier, and stern warning notice eventually dismantled, ignored, and overturned. The tunnels were not as deep, as the construction of the brand new subway system was halted quickly after it began. Rumors circulated that it was due to the misappropriation of funds, or the fact that bedrock under the tunnel was just too hard to drill, or perhaps it was something underneath that did not want to be disturbed. That last one was always added in for good measure, to frighten children who might not know any better. But the stories like these always fascinated Amanda, who wanted to believe the whole world around her was alive with spirits, natural and otherwise. So she gleefully embraced the legend of something lurking in the old subway tunnels. However, this did not prevent her from wanting to go along with the others. Far from it. She viewed it as a chance to persuade them that she was right in allowing for the impossible. When Justin proposed going, she jumped at the chance, promising Yvonne and Martina a night of communing with spirits, a life-changing experience that would inspire them to appreciate Applewood and view their sad little town with renewed awe and respect. When Halloween night arrived, they gathered at Yvonne's house with their flashlights, all wearing warm clothing in anticipation of the chill below. Martina had nagging doubts in her head still. What if one of us slips and breaks a leg, she thought. No dancing at the winter's ball if that happens. And she really wanted to show off her and Yvonne's brand new dancing skills, after 2 of them have been going to salsa lessons for months. Hesitantly, she put the thought of any injuries out of her mind. They would be careful, she decided, and she would be there to make sure that they were. Finally, they were off and walking through the streets of Applewood, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the dark of night started to settle over the houses and streets. Children still finishing up their last games before going trick-or-treating, or hurrying inside to watch a spooky movie. The 4 of them approached the mangled entrance to the tunnels, with its remnants of multiple fences, barricades, police cameras uselessly watching the empty street with their wires cut. Some of them were completely smashed to bits. So boring. Martina...
Wait.
What?
I'm just making sure it's still in focus. Good. All right.
Okay. Martina mused that the town was so boring that other teenagers would worm their way into the abandoned construction site just for a chance at adventure. We really need to get a life or something, she sighed. Maybe if you change your hobby from telling tales of spirits to painting or something, we would not be so eager to go down in this hole, Amanda. Nothing down there anyway. We'll just wander for an hour or 2 and come home with absolutely nothing to show for it. Amanda turned to her in the front. They're not just tales. Spirits appear to people all the time, she said. Some of us just not perceptive enough to see them. She marched ahead in a huff, leading them all down the street as the sky hung heavy with clouds overhead, and the distant cries of excited trick-or-treaters could be heard through the neighborhood. They passed the latest patchwork in the chain link fence, already cut and bent in several places, not even needing to crouch to pass through the opening, clearly heavily used, the ground already littered with beer cans, cigarette butts, an occasional bra or glove left on a branch of a nearby tree, a silent and forlorn witness to an episode of canoodling that has taken place nearby. We also really need to find a more romantic and even just more comfortable spot for this kind of thing, Martina thought, eyeing Amanda and Justin as they walked closely together, not speaking, but still almost touching hands. The two of them were so close to an item that Yvonne and Martina made a bet with each other about how soon the two of them would figure it out. Giving each other meaningful looks and snickering, they stepped out of the lamplight and into the darkness of the tunnels. It was colder down here compared to the outside world, air musty and damp, with occasional drops of water heard over their muffled conversation. As they progressed past the walls covered with graffiti, Amanda started another tale about the spirits, which would most likely lived here. Have you heard this story about a girl who wanted to kill herself? She came down here to do it. She was going to slash her wrists, but then she couldn't bring up the courage to actually cut herself. She was on her way out when she was snatched by something and never seen again. They say that the spirits were angry that she denied them an offering of herself and didn't want to miss out. Amanda relayed the story in a matter-of-fact way, as if the girl had only herself to blame for a botched suicide attempt. Martina could really never think that way. She sympathized with this probably completely fictional girl. To change her mind about her intended suicide, she had to be strong, not weak, and to be so close to escaping the tunnels only to be snatched back by something monstrous? Well, that was likely the most fictional part of it all. As they walked, the light of the few lamplights at the entrance faded behind them, becoming a pin dot far away, barely noticeable. They turned on their flashlights, spooking each other with the shadows, Yvonne shrieking and jumping closer to Martina anytime a spiderweb touched her face. As they went deeper and deeper, the slight feeling of unease settled over Martina. Hey guys, weren't these tunnels supposed to be short? Do they even branch like this? I thought it was just a single tunnel. I don't remember anyone mentioning anything about branches. Yvonne looked at her like she was insane. Darling, what are you saying? Of course this is how the tunnels are. We're hardly a few feet away from the entrance, right guys? She turned around to look at Amanda and Justin. Justin shrugged. Amanda was nowhere to be seen. Yvonne immediately went in panic mode. Amanda! Amanda! She yelled, her screams bouncing off the tunnel walls so suddenly that the two almost had to put their hands over their ears. This is not funny! Come out! They scattered, looking everywhere, shining their flashlights all over the walls. No Amanda appeared in their yellow spots of light, but something did occur to Martina as her flashlight jerkily danced across a wall on the far side of the tunnel. These walls were no longer the smooth concrete of the entrance, or even the decorative red brick of the proposed first station walls that they left behind. They were earth, raw dirt, covered in scratches and deep furrows. And on that earthen wall, a washed-out image of a girl bloomed, the colors coming through the dirt itself, as if someone assembled a collection of red clay, dark brown mud, rich black earth, and occasional small pebbles, all laid out in a mural on the wall. It was rudimentary, it was faint in their shaking flashlight's beams, but it was unmistakably Amanda. Her long red hair, her dark eyes. She looked as she was gazing into the distance at something or someone far beyond where her friends could see. Yvonne screamed again, this time not even calling her name, just a raw scream as her eyes filled with tears. Martina hugged her close. We're getting out of here right now. Justin, let's go. As soon as we're outside, we're calling the police. If Amanda is down here somewhere, they will find her. Maybe she just got lost or decided to turn back. If there's something strange going on down here, we're not staying to find out. They almost ran backwards the way they had come, but that tiny spot of light which stayed behind them as a far-off beacon of hope seemed to have been extinguished. They walked quickly without speaking until Justin let out a sharp yell and dropped to the ground behind them. Martina's mind was instantly alive with vivid images of monsters dragging Justin away to be consumed, pale slimy things emerging from the ground right at their feet. They both spun around to see Justin lying on the ground, his leg twisted behind him at an unnatural angle. He kept screaming, clearly in pain, clutching in his knee. "Goddamn hole! I didn't even see it! My leg! Oh my god, it hurts!" Martina exchanged a quick glance with Yvonne. As much as they wanted to be out of this place as soon as possible, they couldn't just leave Justin there by himself. They would have to help him along. Slowly, too slowly, they got him suspended between the two of them, his useless leg trailing behind. With him wincing at every step, they started forward again, trying not to look too closely at the dirt walls still oppressively surrounding them, the strange lack of tiny ring of lamplight ahead. As they shuffled along, Martina thought she heard something behind them in the darkness, but it was Justin grunting in pain every few seconds. She thought it was just a strange echo or something. After a short while, they stopped to rest for a minute. Justin was pale, sweaty, barely conscious, slumping to the ground. Yvonne whispered to Martina, "I think he might just pass out. We should do something for his leg, like a tourniquet or, I don't know, something." They both glanced around. They only had their clothes, flashlights, no bags, no first aid kit, no sticks or branches or anything to use as a crutch. Their initial thought was to leave as fast as possible and to contact the authorities, but it looked like it might be harder to do than they thought after all. Justin watched them sitting there, just a couple feet away, whispering about him. He wanted to stay strong for his friends, but the pain from his leg drove all the brave impulses out of his head. As a guy who faced a lot of teasing at school, he knew how to take a punch, but this pain was so well beyond anything had ever experienced that he felt like he was just going to leave his body behind just to escape it. As he sat wavering on the edge of consciousness, his friends seemed to slide gently further and further away from him, their flashlights growing dim with the distance. Justin thought that he was fainting or something when he felt a smooth presence around his body. It constricted his movements, and for a second he thought it must have been Amanda holding him close, hugging him, that she had appeared out of nowhere just to help him, and that everything was going to be okay. Next thing he knew, his leg had exploded in a wave of pain, which he thought to be impossible until now. He was being dragged by his injured leg deeper into the tunnel. His friends were getting further away. That part was not an illusion. But the sudden explosion of agony brought everything into sharp focus, and Justin realized something massive had him by the leg and was taking him deeper into the tunnel. He screamed and cried and clung at the earth and flung his arms out to try to stop his descent into the dark. Martina and Yvonne's voices could still be heard yelling his name, the bouncing lights of their flashlights everywhere at once, and abruptly extinguished as he felt himself falling down a sharp decline. All went pitch black and silent around him. As Justin was having his waking nightmare, Yvonne and Martina sat frozen in place, watching his body disappear from their view as he screamed. When all went silent and black once again, they shakily stood up. Neither of them even mentioned Justin's name as they clutched at each other, half running, half stumbling along, tears running down their cheeks. "Do not look back, do not look back, do not look back," Martina kept muttering to herself as they stumbled along. She kept casting her thoughts back, wondering if there was something they could have done, something they did wrong to cause all this madness to happen. Plenty of kids went into these tunnels every day, It was a wonder that he had not even met any of them today, as it were, even before everything went so horribly wrong. What the hell? Is it some sort of alternative reality? She thought to herself hysterically, letting out a weak laughter as she half led, half dragged Yvonne down the tunnel towards the blessed tiny dot of light which finally appeared at the end of their vision. Yvonne cringed at the sound of Martina's ill-timed laugh, sobbing weakly in return. For Yvonne, the sudden disappearances of her friends still seemed distant, as if they were suddenly going to pop out from behind the corner and yell, "Surprise!" She did not believe in monster and ghosts as Amanda did, but Justin's screams as he was swiftly dragged away for a something were so real. She closed her eyes and just held Martina's arm for dear life as they plodded on. A few steps later, the pressure on her arm lifted and the air felt fresher. Yvonne opened her eyes, hopeful that they were almost out of these cursed tunnels, and then her tears froze on her cheeks. Martina was gone, and Yvonne was standing in an empty field, scattered with flowers. The sun was setting, and there was a bit of a breeze in the air. Yvonne saw the field stretching as far as the eye could see, no sight of town anywhere nearby. She screamed and screamed out loud until she got hoarse. The sun set, and then the darkness came for her. Martina ran out of the tunnel, blubbering like a child, screaming, crying, and almost tripping over a pair of town cops on their evening patrols through the ill-fated abandoned tunnels. After listening to her incoherent screaming for a few moments, they rushed into the tunnel, but emerged back only a few minutes later, confused and a bit angry. The tunnels ended after just a few hundred feet, just as they always did, and they could not find any branches or earthen scratches or anything else. Martina listened in a cold stupor as they recounted her the details of what they did find inside. A painting on the concrete wall, which has been there for almost a year, they said, bearing only a passing resemblance to what Amanda looked like. There was a hole in the ground, just where Justin fell, and nothing but a spill of red paint at the wall nearest to the hole, and a graffitied image of a rat high on the wall above the paint. Of Yvonne, there was no sign at all. And so Martina went home, with nothing to show for her last 2 hours of wandering beneath the earth. Nothing at all.
And that is why when I go through a tunnel, I make sure I'm in a car. Next, we have Fandom Legacy with Zach Durazo telling a story of a knight who investigates a barren town.
Night Inquisitor Talia's log, 30th day of the 10th month of the year 819, Age of Ascension. I have concluded my investigation into the disappearance of the citizens of Rivermist. No bodies, no sign of a struggle, no blood. The people simply appear to have vanished into nothingness. Below are excerpts from the diary of Cadmus Brisbane, a local surgeon, detailing the incidents in the week leading to the disappearance. Note similarities to other recent events.
October 23rd. Today went like every other day. Complex work for simple pay. Grin almost killed a guy by giving him the wrong medication, again. After making him puke it up and making sure he was okay, I had words with Grin. Strong words. I worry that he's become a danger to this hospital and all that it serves. I have no patience for people like him. Suppose I must have looked particularly pissed off as I left. A homeless man dressed in rags and smelling of booze harassed me on the way home. He kept asking if I was happy, if I felt like I belonged, if I wanted friends. as if he knows anything about my life. He was obviously drunk and incapable of any intelligent thought. We've seen a lot of newcomers over the last few years, and the city only seems to be getting worse. For some reason, I can't stop thinking about the man. He just kept asking those questions over and over and over again, like that was all he could say. I finally managed to lose him a few blocks away from my home by shoving him to the ground. I felt bad about it, but I have to deal with enough at work, and I don't need to have to worry about drunks in the street. Plus, I didn't want him knowing where I lived. He just lay there looking around confused. Time to curl up with my cat, a good book, and think of better things. October 24th. Grin has gone too far this time. That lazy jackass finally messed up enough to get him fired, I hope. The homeless man from yesterday was brought in, crazed and violent, foaming at the mouth, pale. It took 2 of the volunteer adventurers to knock him out and get him on a table so we could even figure out what was wrong with him. I had Grin restrain him while I started looking him over. High fever, dilated and unreactive pupils, pale and sweaty skin, yellowed teeth and lips. I was thinking some kind of poison or some kind of gutter disease, but I didn't even have a chance to look at him fully. As it turns out, Grin hadn't fastened the harness right. Took the patient maybe 2 minutes to wake up, and when he did, he immediately turned and bit a chunk out of my arm. The adventurers tried to knock him out and even tried spells on him, but he'd shrugged them off like some kind of beast. He just kept asking, "Are you happy?" Screaming like some kind of crazed slogan. Poor bastard. We ended up having to kill him to get him off of one of the nurses. I don't even remember what Grin said, but that long-eared bastard said something. Did it even matter what he said? I decked him in his rich, perfect teeth, stormed out, still bleeding. That dumb, ignorant, lazy asshole cost him in his life, and I swear if I get sick because of him. I just got home and treated the wound. I guess it wasn't as deep as I thought it was, but by the gods does it sting. Jasper's been avoiding me since I got home. I guess he senses my fury and doesn't want any part of it. The poor guy has to deal with me when I get home like this. I'll grab him a fish at the market tomorrow. October 25th. Today has not been kind to me. I woke up to a wave of nausea and spent 15 minutes evacuating anything and everything inside of my body violently. I then lay back down for only a few minutes rest before someone came to visit. Grin's father, the director of the facility, came to tell me that I'd been fired and that charges would be brought against me for the assault of his son. He left before I could even muster enough wakefulness to reply. It would seem Grin has had a very different story to tell, in which I were the one who restrained the man. The tragedy has been pinned on me. Sitting here now in pain, blazing with fever, having taken any and all of the remedies I have at the house, the last I would probably ever have my hands on. Should charges be brought, no apothecary would trust me with their medication, no alchemist with their herbs. I'll be nothing but a jobless husk with the curse of knowledge and skill, cursed to never be happy in another profession and disgraced as a man. And Jasper still refuses my company, hissed at me today as I approached. Even my cat turns on me now. I think back to the man that Grin's incompetence killed. Are you happy? Do you feel alone? Do you need friends? I need a drink. October 26th. I return home now after another ordeal caused by that insufferable maggot. It would seem that in my lowered constitution from my illness, my tolerance for alcohol was compromised. I awoke in the nearby forest, face down in the dirt and lost. I looked around and thought for some reason that my house lay further into the forest. It took me a few minutes of just confused wandering down that path before I realized. Even now, I feel compelled to wander that path. An odd effect of my fever, maybe? The pain and nausea are gone now. Just the fever remains. I haven't felt the need to eat or drink since last night. My thoughts wander again to the homeless man. Are you happy? What did he mean? Did he somehow sense my coming calamity? I began to ponder on the meaning of happiness and whether I was ever truly happy. Alone in my profession, no children or wife. I doubt the feelings of adolescent loneliness ever left me. Even my damned cat seems distant and intent on my wrath. The damned creature attacked me when I got home, scratching and clawing at my feet until I had to kick it away. I haven't seen it since. I called on my friends from last night. None of them were home. I had a strange dream last night. A cabin in the woods, dark and unlit, but oddly welcoming in its solidarity. I walked to it and felt more at home than I'd ever felt. Oddly at peace and whole. Behind a veil moved a shape, large and bulbous, but somehow loving and warm.
Note the change in handwriting, indicating a radical shift in the subject's state of mind.
October 27th. I woke up walking down that same path again. I was further along this time. I appear to have sleepwalked there, unaware of my actions. The pain's gone, and I now realize what I didn't realize before. The confusion's gone. I know where my home is. I returned to the apartment and on the way saw another man asking others, "Are you happy?" I stopped and spoke with him. It would seem we share quite a bit in common. As he left, he hugged me and whispered, "Till all are one," in my ear. I've been thinking about that since I arrived home. Just so much pain and anxiety are caused by the separation we feel from one another. So much hate and misery. Society's it's a poor substitute for true unity. I dreamt of the creature again last night, the one beyond the veil. My cat's dead. I came home to find it beaten and traumatized, coughing and wheezing, lying bleeding on the floor. I felt compelled to give it a proper burial, the ragged, limp, pathetic thing all alone. I found myself wandering the path again with the limp body in my hand. Further and further and further I wandered until I found the house I knew would be there. Felt oddly at peace as I placed Jasper on the doorstep. I watched and I waited. The thing that came for Jasper shook me. Fleshy pink tendril spilled from the broken doorway and picked up the corpse almost lovingly. I stood transfixed as the abomination pulled him into itself, the cat's body melding and melting into the appendage. As it did, the cat's eyes opened, and in an oddly blissful way, its features joined the hundreds of others. I stood there enraptured and terrified before my fear got the best of me. I ran home as fast as I could, but my mind is swimming with the thoughts of Jasper's face. October 28th, I cannot think, I cannot feel. Thoughts of separation and anxiety fill me. Thoughts of hate and lust and need. I feel apart, separate from others. I want to forgive. I had drinks with Grin. When he wasn't looking, I cut myself and let my lifeblood flow into his cup. He will soon understand. I share myself with him, and he will soon become a part of us. Afterwards, I walked the now familiar path, but realized something as I got to the edge of the forest, and I saw another on their pilgrimage. I long to return to the cabin, but it's just not my time yet. As I return, I ask those around me if they wish to join in our bliss, if they feel alone as I once did, if they too want to be one. They reacted with fear, as expected. The fools. They'll soon understand. October 29th. I returned to the hospital this morning. It's time. No doubt lingers in my mind. I chopped off a piece of myself and let it fall into the water supply. Everyone will soon be forgiven and happy. They will soon feel no pain, no confusion, as I no longer feel. I no longer feel the need for this house. I see my friends as they travel to where I now must go. I bring with me many others that now understand. We will be one. We will all be happy till all are one.
This event bears frightening relation to the Cinderfall incident, and an incendiary purification team have been requested to cleanse the area. Roads into and out of River Mist have been closed. It is my recommendation to the High Council that the barony of Wintersbane be purified, as the aberration from the initial incident appears to have survived and spread. Should this log be found, these findings must be conveyed to the High Council for the sake of the kingdom.
It makes you wonder, are you truly happy? Next, we have Tara Clapper with the Geek Initiative.
This story is called The Speakeasy, Orla, and the Jersey Devil, a tale from the Pine Barrens. Shh. You're not supposed to tell anyone about McGinty's. As far as you know, this place doesn't exist. Last thing we need are coppers around the place, but I work here sometimes, you know. I get shy sometimes, I really do. But a couple of these, and I'm pretty good up there on stage. My cousin, he owns the speakeasy. Well, unofficially, he operates it, I guess you'd say. But the fellas come here for two things: to drink and to hear me. See, I was born here, but my parents weren't. They did what they had to, and I have a much easier life than they did. I haven't been to Ireland, but I've heard stories about what follows people everywhere, across the sea. Everything from persecution to religion, and even the old ways and curses. Stays with you, Mom said, when you're the kind of person who attracts fae and the like. I don't know if I believe in that stuff. Apparently, there's supposed to be some kind of price to pay if you have a talent or something. And I suppose I do believe I have a talent for singing and all because, well, you know, like I said, the fellas come to hear me and to drink. We get some of the veterans, you know, from the war. One guy who survived the Somme never came back right. But he seems at peace when he hears me. He's as American as I am, but he thinks I'm a Leannan she. Oh. As if I could be a creature alluring enough to bring peace to men, let alone set them to their doom. There are a few fellas from the old country. They're asking for rebel songs usually, and my cousin lets them raise their funds here. There's always a rebellion on, isn't there? Even here, halfway between Atlantic City and Philadelphia, it's nice in the woods. Fellas get spooked, though. They say they've seen the Jersey Devil. Like, I believe in that. I mean, I believe in that, but I don't think he's around these parts anymore. Truth is, I'm here late to meet one of them. A fella, not a devil. I mean, he does have this devilish grin. He comes to watch me sing, religiously, I'd say. Saturday night. He says my voice is so velvety, it's more sinful than drink. I imagine he goes to Mass every week. Gotta give him something to confess about, don't I? You know, they say a lot of things about this place, that it's the perfect place for a speakeasy. One of the patrons called it the Hellfire Club of the New World. It's silly, it's just McGinty's. Anyway, this fella's worth my time. Scrappy as can be, he is. Told him my name's Nora, but you know, he calls me Nora Doll. I don't mind. I like him. He says his name's Hunter. Sounds dangerous, I said. He said it ain't just what he is, but what he does. Don't look like much till you take a swing at him. Not that I did, but some fella talking at me while I was up on stage got a little close, and before the bouncers were on him, Hunter told him to back off. Fella took a swing, Hunter dodged, there was money on the fights immediately, thank the Lord above no one pulled steel. And then it was one jab to the gut, and that big fella fell right over. Crushed a table. Hunter didn't ask for anything, but he got a drink on the house. After my set, I sat down, talked with him. Turns out he works for some kind of private investigation firm, but seems to me like he also knows how to have a hell of a good time. He's got this hat, you know. If I didn't have my hair all done nice, I would have nicked it for myself. One drink turned into a few, and truth be told, I hold my liquor slightly better than him, though he might say otherwise. And Hunter gets a little zazzled and tells me he's liking it here with the drinks and all, and me. But he's here to investigate the goings-on, he called them, at first. But what he means are ghosts. The spooky inhabitants of the place. He's an intense guy, but I guess that's the kind of hunter he really is. Looking for ghosts, and he found me along the way. I mean, we've all heard the stories. What was that? But whatever gets him here, I suppose. Anything goes. We can talk about ghosts all night. On the bar, in the back room, maybe even up against the door. There's only one person in a ghost got the password that works this late, and that's Hunter. There's a lot to do when you won't be seen. I think I'm hearing him now. Jesus, maybe he's already drunk or something. I thought he was really hoping to investigate this place. And maybe a little something else. Anyway, here's the story I got to tell him. It ain't exactly romantic, but maybe I'll give him that information he's looking for, and then he'll want to get on with other things. People always drinking out here in the Pine Barrens, thinking the coppers won't notice, and for the most part, that's true. But there's other stuff that lives out here in the woods. Stuff that'll drive people mad, they say. And one of those things is the Jersey Devil. Now, there's been a lot of depictions of this thing, but as you know, Hunter's out to find ghosts, and the Jersey Devil ain't exactly a ghost. And really, the Jersey Devil, this poor lady, she didn't want another kid. She already had 12. And they say she cursed the 13th. But you know what I know, being local most of the time here? It wasn't her. It was the husband that did most of the cursing, and the woman who actually tried undoing it, but it didn't work. That's men for you, trying to stamp out what we women want, even after they finally admit we have the right to vote for it. Anyways, the Jersey Devil was really this kid cursed by his dad. And the dad didn't like having another kid, didn't like that the boy was better at drawing art sticks in the sandy soil than he was at building things. His dad treated him unkind, and I imagine the ma didn't have much time for him. Out here in the pines, if you're not running liquor or going all the way to Philadelphia or Atlantic City for risky work, it's hard life. I'm lucky, you know, I get to sing. I get attention from the fella who caught my eye, and the other ones get punched in the nose. I'm lucky. But anyway, most people out here, they have it tough. We got a lot of Irish families like mine, other immigrants too, people whose grandparents were slaves. Not an easy life. And this Jersey Devil fella sure didn't have one. Anyways, he grew up to be an ugly, spiteful person. Couldn't be a man, because he didn't know what to do with all that anger, I imagine. And before this was McGinty's, he used to come in here. I'll be with you in a second, Hunter. I'm fixing you a drink. Anyhow. Wait, how'd he get in? Must have picked the lock or something. Like I said, Hunter's some kind of private investigator. Anyhow, the fella had it rough. Jersey Devil, he used to come in here before it was McGinty's, and he'd always order the same thing. Had a thing for whiskey, they say. Can't blame him. That was for Hunter. I guess I should pour another one. So he comes in, despite usually not even having enough for the stuff he drank. And while the owner of the place says, "Mr. Jersey Devil, we can't serve you here if you don't pay for your drinks." You might think the fellow was going to tear the place up, but he didn't have to. Everyone else pitched in to cover the devil's debt. And once that was done, the devil asked for something else. Music. And that's how this place started having music around, even before it was McGinty's. So the fellow was nice and satisfied until he started having affections for the regular singer. She didn't return them. It made him angry, and the place kept appeasing him, so they got a new singer. On and on, until they found him a singer that wasn't repulsed by his jarring movements and angry face. Everyone thought, oh, Orla, she'll fix him. She'll soothe his soul. That ain't how it works. For Orla was truly a Leannan she. That means she would fancy a fella, use him to absorb some aspect of his person, in this case his tale of sadness and woe, considering he was already cursed, and also inspire him to make great works. And the devil, he did grow happier for a time. He became a painter and could sell his work and pay his own whiskey bill. And there wasn't any more trouble for some time, but he'd fallen in love with Leannan she, a woman who superficially pitied him, but who really wanted to show the man he shouldn't act as though he deserved her affections. Men. Always thinking they're owed things. If you actually treat a woman kindly, the only exchange between you is whiskey for kisses. Anyway, I don't want to keep Hunter waiting, speaking of that, but I'll finish the tale. Orla, the Leannan she, did pity the man, but she was her own nature, and that nature was fey. He was practically consumed by her, and the beauty of her voice, which became the beauty of his painting. People say he could paint the way she sounded, and that he became less ugly over time. One night, Orla didn't show up. Perhaps it was the Fey realm that kept her, and she was living a lifetime in the span of just a day, as happens with the wee folk, or maybe it was just a test. But there was a new singer that night, and the devil painted her, and she danced with him, and then he painted that. Orla returned the following day, her voice more honeyed than ever, only to discover the paintings and the way the other fellows were talking about this other singer and his behavior with her. Full of rage, she left the devil, never to return again. She told the patrons she was going home, that there was more work for her in Ireland, even though, and with that, she was gone. The devil, for his part, he destroyed all the beautiful paintings he had made. He smashed all the musical instruments. He set the stage on fire, and he killed 6 men. All that rage, all that lust, all that finality of anger pent up within, the coppers say blood stained the walls. I tell ya, I've seen spots of it on that very stage, and it's only Hunter's gaze that keeps me focused and calm when I sing anymore. The blood, it calls to my attention, but his call's stronger. Anyway, they say the Jersey Devil still prowls about, but I think that's all applesauce. He's not around anymore. If it isn't Hunter who's already come in, then I didn't drink all of this. There's nobody else here to... I don't understand. Hunter?
It seems the devil is still out and about. Next, we have Josh Heath from High Level Games.
I have a story that has been passed down to me over the years. In the old days, there was a great feasting hall. The benches were filled. They were filled from the front to the back. Thick slabs of bread and meat lay on the table, and people milled about through the hall, eating the warm, fresh bread, drinking the honeyed mead, the beautiful tasting cider. And they laughed as they walked from one part of the hall to the other, eating and talking and enjoying the time with their family, with their friends. It was the darkest part of the winter. It had been cold. It was always cold in the land at that time. And everyone was happy. There was a great fire raging in the hearth. And then a knock came to the door of the hall. The knock was heavy, and it resounded throughout the hall. And each person stopped and shuddered. Because with a knock at the hall, it could only mean one thing. Everyone that had been invited was here. This was something or someone from outside. And so Eric, the bravest, stood. And Eric looked up and down the hall, and he took a deep breath, and he grabbed his shield and sword and strode to the door. He opened the door, the great, large, barn-sized door, and a wind, cold wind, swept in and chilled to the bone everyone that sat upon the benches. On the other side was a small, cloaked figure. The people in the hall could smell whatever it was. It had a wet, fresh scent, something different than them. The cold wind seemed to flow around everyone, and as the figure moved closer to the door, it became stronger. The smell became stronger, and a sound of ringing bells. The oldest in the room covered their ears to hear the bell because it hurt them. And the youngest looked up in anticipation, but also concern. And Eric boldly said, "Who stands before the door of this hall?" And a strong voice came from within the cloak. And the woman said simply, "I come from along the road, and I seek the grandmother Valerie, for wisdom. I seek her." And the oldest woman in the hall, who wore a cloak in some ways similar to the one the woman at the door wore, stood. And she walked to the front of the hall, and the two women spoke for a moment. And the old woman shuddered in fear at what the figure at the door asked of her. What quiet exchange passed between them, no one knew for sure. No one knew, no one wanted to know. But Grandmother Valerie turned, and she said to Eric, "I must go for a time. I must pass in to the darkness, cross along the road, over the river, through the mountains, and I will return." And the entire hall stood in rage and fury and anger. They said, "You cannot leave. You are here with us. You must stay with us. You must be protected by us. To return, to go there, to go out would be dangerous." And the old woman raised her hand, and the hall went silent. "I know what I have to do. I know what journey I must make." And she turned, and she left with the cloaked woman. And Eric shut the door to the hall. And several nights and days and weeks passed, and most of the hall grew worried at first, and then they moved on. And they began to feast and to drink, and the warm fire continued to rage. And then again, a heavy knock in the middle of the night came upon the door. And this time Eric again stood up with his sword and his shield, intent and confident that he would protect the people of the hall. And he wasn't alone this time. There were others that joined him. Others that joined him in solidarity. And they strode to the door, and they opened it. And the same cold wind swept in, surrounding, piercing, consuming the people in the hall. And there was a figure, again covered by a cloak, a man with one eye, who peered into the hall. He said, "I seek the wisdom of the youngest here, for they have seen something that only they know of." And the youngest children in the hall raised their heads and looked at the man, and they were afraid. But their parents, their grandparents, and all of their relatives hugged them and bid them go. "Speak to the man. You must speak to him to make him go. You must tell him your tale. You must relay your secrets." And they stood bravely with fear in their eyes, and they strode to the man, and he spoke to them quietly. And they passed on the secrets that they had witnessed. And the old man said, "I have what I need. You have spoken true to me. and so I shall leave. And the door was closed. And again, for that evening, the hall was cold and silent, and everyone went to bed early. And again, days and nights and weeks went by, and a hard knock came at the door of the hall again. And this time there was a strong bell that accompanied it. Ding, 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 ding. And again, everyone in the hall that was old, they held their hands over their ears at the sound and were pushed back and away by it. And the young were entranced, excited, interested in what this bell could mean. And Eric strode to the door and opened it. And there was grandmother Valerie returned. She was pale and worn and barely herself. She strode into the hall, and everyone around her put warm clothes and gave her food and drink and bid her, "Where have you been? What have you done? What dangers have you seen on your travels?" She simply shrugged. She shook her head. She couldn't speak yet. And she was drinking a warm bowl of soup when another knock came at the door. But this one was light, a joyous knock. And the old woman stood at that and she said, "We have a new member of our family joining us." And she stood up and walked to the door. And there were two figures in cloaks. The old man with the one eye and a woman that was old and young at once. And the old man pulled her cloak off from her shoulders and said, "Enter now, lady, the halls of your ancestors. No longer do you need to call on them for their wisdom, because now your wisdom is joined with them in death." And so the woman strode into the hall, and she was welcomed. She was given bread and mead, and that is where she lives still, in the halls of her ancestors.
A truly terrifying tale indeed. Next, we have Lost Colonies with Marquis Tyrell.
Welcome, welcome. Welcome to my home on this wonderful harvest night. Oh, the harvest season is one of my favorites. You see, the harvest is a time to reap what one has sown throughout the year, a time both to bring in the crops and to learn important lessons. Some often try to learn their lessons throughout the year by divining with one of our most sacred of tools, the Destiny Deck. In it, you will find many different things. The spirits, or the major ones at that. The courts of which they can be separated. But perhaps most important of this deck you will find the major arcana. There are stories to be learned from the arcana. Some true, some perhaps not so true. That will be your job to decide tonight what this story is. Forgive me. The harvest time is a time where it's much easier for sickness to take hold, and perhaps sickness is exactly where my story should start. In the major arcana, you will find the visage of the empresses, Empress Cadmar and Empress Levantra. It is through their love that our great Sobekund was able to be brought to peace, to unite all of our disparate nations and peoples under a single banner. However, it has been well over 70 years since the King's Wars have ended, and yet the Empresses still live, almost as youthful as the day they ended the wars. In the capital of Kasir, one day, Empress Levantra lay sick. A terrible cough had riddled her health. The best healers of our land were brought under oath of secrecy to try and heal our beloved Empress. But unfortunately, every single one said the same thing, that there was to be no cure, that death would finally come for Empress Levantra. Both of the empresses looked at each other with knowing smiles. Cadmar turned to her servants in the room and with a simple declared, "We shall have a banquet." Now, I'm certain you're wondering, why on earth would an empress throw a banquet when she is ill? An unfortunate tale. We turn our attention to the rest of Sobekund. For you see, upon our map, you will see many of the major cities where our peoples congregate. However, outside of those are many villages and hamlets of various names and some without. This is where our story turns. Such a nameless village in the Feldlands. Within this village, there was a young lady by the name of Michaela. Michaela was a haughty child. She believed that she was a natural-born leader, that she could command the other children of the village to play any game that she wanted. Michaela herself decreed she was queen of the village, something that the mayor found to be quite irksome at times when he wasn't laughing. However, one fell day when Michaela was 16 years old was when this banquet was to be held. And an imperial procession came to their village. It presented every young lady with the same beautifully embossed invitation. Come to our palace. You shall be treated like royalty and given a night you shall never forget. Of course, any young lady invited to the castle of the Empresses would be excited. Rumors were soon swirling around and around of what could this possibly mean. Were they to be made into royalty, given a world-class education? Michaela said that she was going to be named the new Empress of Sobukund. The children all laughed. To be Empress when both Empresses sit on the throne? But Michaela was a haughty child, and she cocked her head and sniffed in that imperious air. Of course I'll be made Empress. They've had it long enough. The girls did not notice their elders' averted gazes and hushed sobs. Remember this, traveler. Never discount the advice of old wives. They remember things that have long been forgotten in life. But the girls were too busy with self-importance to notice such sadness. They were aflutter with all kinds of activity until the fateful day of the banquet. A carriage came for each individual girl with servants to dress and make them beautiful. The girls were absolutely shocked to see such treatment in a nameless village of Feldland was unheard of. But no one suspected what was to come, as hair was brushed and combed and styled, as jewelry was placed upon finger and wrist and neck, as dresses were placed carefully on. The girls felt only beauty adorning them, not the dread that was to come. All of the girls arrived in Cassir for the banquet and stepped from their carriages. They were announced as if they were ladies of the court. No girl was truly different, but they did not notice that their jewels, their hair, and their dresses all matched. It did not matter their ancestry. Erdenkind, Aloyim, Faden, all sorts of girls were assembled, and yet they all looked different. They all looked the same. They marched up the steps into the palace of the Empresses, walking down very beautiful halls of portraits and artwork, statues of all kinds. You saw many impressive portraits of the Empresses themselves, and the girls cooed and awed until they were finally presented to the dining room. And there they realized that the banquet was simply for them and the Empresses alone. There was no grand party, it seemed. Only a private dinner. Of course, many of the girls were disappointed, none more so than our Michaela. But who could ever pass up the opportunity to dine with royalty? The girls took their respective seats and noticed the beautiful dishes laid out before them, sweet meats, fresh vegetables, the most succulent of fruit. Nothing was spared for the luxury of this meal. After all, empresses were at the table. Michaela noticed how beautiful everything looked in the castle and hoped one day she might be able to call it her own. As the young women took their places, the empresses were presented to them. Empress Cadmar looked an absolute vision in green. Empress Levantra in white. The young ladies all took immediate notice of the failing health of Empress Levantra. They each held their hands to themselves, stealing and admiring the courage it takes to continue one's imperial duties even under such drastic illness. However, this presentation set Michaela on edge. It seemed that she was the only one who had noticed that all the young ladies matched the exact attire of Empress Levantra. However, the dinner commenced and conversation was had. Laughs and boasts and jovial nature drove the evening. For an hour, they all dined together. As dessert was finished, Empress Cadmar stood, taking a cup in her hand. A servant came to fill it with wine. A toast I wish to make to all of you. A toast to the future of Sobukund and the future Empress in the room. Ahs, gasps were heard. One of them was to be made Empress. It couldn't be. A dream come true, especially for Michaela. The servants came to pour wine for all of the young ladies in turn, and as well for Empress Levantra. They all stood and made a toast. And all but two drank deeply. Empress Cadmar and Michaela both stayed from their cups. The wine was delicious, robust, and smoky, a beautiful red as ever had been created. But in just a few seconds, a cough overtook Levantra. The final cough she would ever have. And she fell at the table, dead. The young ladies were aghast at seeing such a thing in front of them until a cough took them over as well. Each young lady who had imbibed the wine began to cough their final coughs of life. Each one sickened by poison. Empress Cadmar looked over the girls and let her eyes fall upon Michaela. So you are the one chosen to be Empress. Michaela looked on in horror. To see those she called her friends be so brutally murdered, it wasn't right. She always wanted to be a queen, but never like this. Empress Cadmar took the crown from the now dead Levantra and began to walk towards Michaela with a simple 2 sentences. The queen is dead. Long live the queen. Michaela took a step back. This was not right. This was not right, and she fled from the dining room. Unfortunately, what she did not realize is that she was no longer at home, and the castle was labyrinthine. Soon as she took winding corners trying to get out, every time she would pass, a light would go out. She ran as hard as she could, desperately trying to get away, but every single time she did, she would see Empress Cadmar there, with the crown in her hands. The queen is dead. Long live the queen. Never uttering more than those words. Soon, most of the lights of the castle went out. She was in darkness, and Michaela was rightfully scared. Because every time she turned around, it wasn't just Cadmar she saw anymore. It was Levantra. She never spoke, simply had a look upon her face. It was terrifying to her, seeing this look. Michaela fled left and right, up and down, backwards and forwards, until she could not breathe anymore. She tried so desperately to catch her breath, to stay silent as a mouse, to escape this utter torment, to escape from this castle and get home. There, home, she would be safe. Finally, she saw it. The light of the foyer, the entrance to the castle. Michaela was free. Finally, at last, she could go home and put all of this behind her. As she ran towards it with a desperation, she did not watch her feet. And she tripped over something metallic. She heard it clatter as she fell down the dress, making it difficult to right herself. She looked, and it was Levantra's crown that was by her feet. She gasped in horror as Cadmar appeared behind her and righted her. Michaela was frozen. Some force kept her from moving. She had not focused her eyes in front of her, but when she did, again, she gasped until it became a terrifying shriek. Cadmar took the crown and began to place it upon Michaela's head. Michaela watched as she saw a reflection of Cadmar placing a crown on Levantra's head. And as the crown fell upon the top of Michaela's head, she heard the words, "The queen is dead." Michaela felt her body changing. Slowly, ever so slowly, becoming something that was not hers. And she felt her vision going deep into the dark. Until she realized the reflection in the mirror was now who she was, Levantra. And as her mind fell deep into the dark, the last 4 words she'd ever hear: "Long live the Queen."
I guess it just shows you should be careful what you wish for. Next, we have Erica Skirpin from Entropic Endeavors.
Jazz echoed beneath the sounds of quiet laughter and gin-drunk voices inside the farmhouse. But then something disturbed the revelry. A sound came first, an inhuman, breathless keening from the heavy shadows of the farm's lawn. Rudy pushed the farmhouse's screen door open to listen to the night and confirm if he'd heard something. There it was again, louder this time. His heavy footfalls took him down the stairs to the lawn, and he slowly drew his gun. His eyes narrowed at the darkness as he tried to see what made the unholy noise. The darkness moved. Something inhuman crawling its way up the lawn, body moving like a broken puppet, disjointed, alien. Rudy aimed his gun, still unable to tell what it was as the creature grew closer. He knew he wouldn't let it inside. He wouldn't let it disturb their rare bit of happiness. Another foot closer, and under the gas lamp of the porch, he caught something glistening and wet from its top, dripping with red clots and pine needles and leaves caught in the slimy exterior. Rudy had seen a lot of war. He had never seen a monster like this. He began to depress the trigger on his Colt when the creature crawled a foot closer. The flickering gaslight caught the edge of a tan shirt collar. It wasn't a creature. It was a person. It keened again. Fuck, oh fuck. Rudy quickly reholstered his weapon and dashed down the rest of the way. Closer now, and eyes adjusted to the shadows, he could make out more of the figure. Its entire head was a model of glistening flesh blood or burns. A few stringy strands of dark hair stuck to the back of the skull, and the collar of its shirt was a military tan, but it quickly faded into stains of red and black, or worse. A touch of viscera trailed after it, picking up the fall foliage from the ground as it crawled up. It keened again. Rudy had seen a lot of things in the Great War. He had never seen anything like this. Fucking help me! Somebody go get the fucking doctors! The man shouted, the jazz band abruptly cutting off inside. He leaned down, trying to gather the thing up into his arms without doing more damage. Its body yielded like a rag doll, and it was softer than he expected. Not just a person, a woman. Something did this to a woman. He carried her up the front stairs of the farmhouse, stumbling for that same screen door he'd come out earlier. Patty was there, always on hand to help. When the Irishman saw the thing clinging against Rudy, he jumped, half drawing his gun as well. What the fuck, Rudy? He lilted, wary of letting the thing into their precious house. He had no clue what it was, but it didn't look or sound human. If he's gonna fucking kill you, you're bringing some monster in here, you know. It's a person and she needs help. She. Patty took a step forward to try and lend assistance, but the smell of charred flesh and viscera was almost too much. He stumbled back just in time for Dr. Eidelman and Helena to cut their way through the crowd. Get it! Her to the infirmary, the calm voice ordered, the small group assisting the keening, broken woman into the back area. She'd mostly gone quiet, other than the rattling echoes of ragged breath. That all changed when she saw the room inside. No, no, please, no more, no, please, no more, no more. She begged, struggling against Rudy's tight grip. He was stronger than her, though, and the medical staff of the Mishpacha were ordering her quickly down onto a bed. He pinned her there, trying to ignore the chaos around him. In the light of the infirmary, her injuries were horrifically visible. It looked like somebody had scalped her, cauterized it, and then scalped her again. Her face was raggedly cut, one eye entirely put out, and the other darting around like a frantic animal. Blood caked her military cut shirt and slacks. The one full leg had been ripped through and skinned. Her palms were burned, her wrists purple from the binds. Rudy'd never seen torture like this. Let me give her something for the pain. Dr. Eidelman came over, an ether cloth in his hand. Helena stood by to assist as ever. The moment the woman on the bed saw the cloth masked face, though, and smelled the ether, her screaming got worse. No more doctors, no more doctors, please, no more doctors, please don't, please, no more doctors. She begged and thrashed. It took Eidelman and Rudy holding her down while Helena drugged her just to get her to go to sleep. The damage to her body was so expensive. It was the worst Eidelman had ever seen. What happened? Do we know? Does anyone know who she is? Others from the Mishpacha gathered, and some of the root, the scene drawing a dozen eyes from the masquerade party that had been rudely interrupted. No one spoke. A sick hush fell over the room. No one seemed to know until Shira quietly offered, Look at her shirt. Doesn't she look like the agent? The woman, federal agent, the one who tried to arrest several of us the other month. Wasn't she shot? Shira's voice was somehow both calm but angry, stern but sad. She'd seen too much death in her day, and she would not walk away from this either. Lottie and Nora stepped closer, two beautiful sirens out of the shadows from upstairs. Nora nearly puked when she saw the woman, but Lottie just nodded slowly. She recognized that shirt, the one shoe that the woman federal agent had left on. She tortured that woman from the Cuervos, you know. She tortured her for information. What happened to her? What happened to this agent? Shira demanded quietly. The darkness. We shot her in the knee, and we fed her to the darkness. We thought it would get rid of her, get rid of her body. We couldn't have any more dead feds on the farm. They're gonna come after us, so we fed her to the darkness. Another silent hush fell over the room. For all the atrocities the world committed against the people here, they had to be better. Whatever the darkness was, whatever ate people on the outside of the farm, gave them nightmares so often, plagued the edges of this happy community for 2 years now. Whatever it was hell. No one deserved to go there. No one came back from the darkness if you went there more than an hour or two. At least, no one until tonight. The lady agent opened her one good eye again, only to see herself surrounded by doctors and medical tools. The panicked screaming started anew. She thrashed, tearing open her guts fresh again, begging the room, please, no more doctors, please, no more. Izzy and Helena stared at each other. There was no helping this woman. Even the best of surgeons could only do so much, and they were in a tiny farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. They didn't need to exchange words. They just silently nodded. Izzy grabbed 3 doses of morphine. It should be enough. Most of the Mishpacha helped hold her down as she begged. Lottie kept tight hold of her hand. Slowly, the needle was administered. Her fighting calmed second by second as the room began to sing quietly. Her one good eye fluttered shut. That constant keening of breath began to relax, and then her hand in Lottie's let go. There was nothing but the low singing and a few ragged tears, the limp form of a skinned, burned woman, and another atrocity to add to the list of what the darkness could do to people from the farm. They stood quietly and they sung.
A terrifying tale indeed. Next up, we have Larp Link, Luke Mahar. It seems they were too scared to even tell a tale. Instead, we will go to Ryan Hart with Sinking Ship.
Wow, hi everybody. I'm on my laptop right now. I hope everybody can hear me. I'd like to wish y'all a happy Halloween. When they asked me to do this, I'm like, well, I'm not really much of a actual writer or even a storyteller. And I'd say, well, what can I do? So I did what anybody does when they don't know something in 2019 is I Googled it, and they came up with a couple of rules. And the first rule that they came up with that I read was you need to take into account ambiance. And I think you saw a lot of that. Definitely a whole lot of awesome stuff. Some great stories. But I'm like, wait, there's a problem here. And as I'm looking at my computer and I'm watching this, I realize I'm in a hotel room right now. And you're watching it probably on your computer in your bedroom or your living room or your office. And I'm like, well, what's the scariest thing that you have in your home? Is it in the kitchen? Is it in the basement? Like, is it the furnace? Like, what is it? And I realized that right now you're looking at the scariest thing that you got. So I'm going to ask you to do something. Just take your hands away from the keyboard and like it on Facebook or something. But just take your hands away and look at what you're looking at right now. And I'll just describe what I got. I got a laptop. It obviously has a camera. So it's always watching me, everything that I do, and it's always listening to me. And now I want you to just take a moment. You don't have to answer this. Think of everything you've done in front of that camera, even when you thought it wasn't on. Think of everything that you've seen or heard, everything that your computer knows about you. Think about everything you put in there. I was talking to a guy who did investigations. He was a private eye, and the number one way that they catch people is through a computer. But all they do is they wait until you're not home, go in, figure out, you put in a keystroke logger, and then figure out what all your passwords are. And then they got everything on you, right? I mean, look at this computer. This is the scariest thing you got. It's got the camera, it's got the microphone, it's got your hard drive, it's got every picture you've ever taken. It's all in the cloud now. But even more, it's listening to you all the time. I got another buddy. His job is to take a look at what's your phone is listening to. You say the word Disney, like I like Disney princesses, and then for the next 2 weeks, you get everything on your computer. It's telling you, hey, let's go to Disney World and that sort of thing. But yeah. So I take a look at this, I figure the scariest thing. And so the ghost story that I want to tell is something that's really not that far away. It's just how far from your computer is this monster? Think of the stuff that can be on there. You could be a digital ghost. You can visit old people's Facebooks or something. You can leave messages from beyond the grave. You could be a digital Frankenstein. You can put an identity together from bits and pieces, pull somebody's voice and somebody's pictures and create a Facebook, like a Russian bot winning the election. But the one thing that I'm most concerned about is the body snatcher. I want you to picture this. There you are at your computer, and by the time that I'm done with this, somebody's logged into your computer and just taken and stolen your identity. We worry about this. We worry about our bank accounts, right? Like our money, which is all digital. We don't worry about the money in our wallets, but none of us usually have more than, $20 in there these days. It takes all your money. It takes your social security number. It takes your email. But now it has your car payment, your insurance. It has your music collection, all of that. It can answer any question. If you go in and say, what's your mother's maiden name? That's in there somewhere. So then you look and you say, hey, how do you tell your friends that something's happened? Well, how many of you are going to go on Facebook? But because now you don't have that. The Facebook message is up as, hey, somebody stole my phone. Don't answer my phone. Or maybe they hacked your phone and maybe you don't have that anymore. You go and your contacts list is gone. Nobody has their phone number memorized. I don't know how to call my parents or my wife. The best I can do is call the house I lived in 1997, and that phone is long gone. I live in New York City. I can't drive anywhere. I can't call an Uber. I guess I could get on the subway with my subway card, but that's digital too now, isn't it? I mean, that's reading something. I guess that I can get away with that one. But then what happens? What am I going to do? I'm going to show up at your house banging on the door at 10 o'clock at night saying, hey, somebody stole my identity. You don't believe everything that you read? I mean, if you think about how a person can be boxed out, when was the last time you saw most of your friends? Look at that Facebook page you have on there. Hell, how many of you people have even met me? I could just be some sort of construct. How do you know that I'm Ryan Hart? Pictures can be altered, so can videos. Eventually, you got to ask yourself, what's the difference? What's real and what's not? And whether or not you really care. So I'm looking at this Halloween, and if I were to think of the one thing that's the most scary is I say, who are you really? Because we all think of ourselves as that flesh and blood that you can reach out and touch. But to most of us, we're just a computer screen. It's a nice little story that I had for you. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'd like to say happy Halloween to everyone and thank everybody for this opportunity.
A very true tale. How are any of you sure that the others are real? Next, we go back to Luke with Larp Link to see if he's ready to tell his tale.
A merchant's story, raking it in. Torrin Rake was barely an adult when his imagination took hold of his ambition. He began a business that would eventually grow to become the strongest organization in the world of trade and commerce, the Road. Torrin was a rather strong and stocky boy, still quick on his feet, as most swiftlings are. He began as an errand boy and messenger for some of the local tradesmen. He would run the streets from the capital through the market, delivering the day's going rates to the various stands selling crops and wares. Some growers would pay him a few coins just to fetch the price of crops were being sold for outside the city gates, so as to stay competitive for their customers. In the evenings, he picked up work helping some of the merchants load their wares and wheel them back to the storehouses. After a few months, he had learned the value and worth of various goods. He started to venture outside the city, made his living alongside the trade routes as an arm for hire, protecting caravans and unloading cargo. Though he was being paid well for his labor, he more liked the idea of using his mind instead of his back to earn his living. The main trade routes were long and winding, so it became predictable where to look for trouble along the treks between cities. Caravans would pass each other along the road, and Torin could always tell which ones were the easier targets, judged either by their retinue of hired arms or because of their lack of armaments. He made a fair name for himself, being well organized, and either by chance or due to some other dealings he may have had, it was rare that a caravan he was escorting was the target of an attack. His first few times being ambushed, though, he realized the men hired to defend were disorganized and should have, in both cases, easily overcome their attackers. So he developed a way to take leadership whenever he found himself with guards who appeared to have little experience. He offered even part of his own pay to each of them if they were willing to follow his orders and if they made a successful escort. He bargained with merchants for bonuses for a safe trip. The other men for hire, who always gathered near the gate to offer escorts, soon learned where the best opportunity was to make money, and that was by being hired for a caravan where Torin was in charge. This is where he earned the moniker Master Rake. He became such a hedge against loss of merchandise that the merchants began consulting him about how many guards they should take on, and often simply hired him and let him choose his own men-at-arms. It was during this time when he was allowed to pick and choose his escort, his affinity for dwarven warriors grew as he found them to be amongst the most reliable and orderly. He discovered two important things during his first year of traveling with different merchants. Firstly, he could always sense where a band of raiders would be hiding. So at times, he'd make a show of stopping the caravan a few hundred yards from a potential ambush spot, checking each guard's equipment before taking his post atop the lead carriage and loading the crossbows mounted there. Secondly, most attacks were a wager of risk versus reward. It was obvious to attackers that there was something of import inside an armored carriage. Thus, it didn't pay to have an armored carriage if you didn't have enough guards to protect it. His profound insight came after 2 years of traveling among the merchants. All the merchants hired workers and guards, and on any given day, there were a couple dozen caravans headed in both directions along the main road. Given the length of the road, the frequency of regularity of travel times, and how many personnel were used for each caravan, he surmised it'd be cheaper just to post guards along the entire road for the duration of the day, and then to pay each worker and sword for hire. And so, the road was officially formed. He set up outposts with guards along the road and charged merchants a fee to travel it under protection of the road. At first, many of the merchants found it cheaper than hiring individuals to ride with them, and so the choice was easy. Of course, rates increased when traveling after sundown, but now it was at least a safer option than it was before. After a time, however, merchants became stingy and figured the posted guards along the way were already in place, and some didn't want to pay to travel the road. One evening, an example was made of one such merchant in the hours just after dusk. He'd passed through the third checkpoint along the road and was already 1,000 strides into the woods when he saw the torches ahead at the next checkpoint go out. He slowed his horses and stood up on a seat to look behind him. The torches at the outpost he had just passed went out as well. The moonlight wasn't bright enough to break through the trees to allow him to see his attackers. They were on him in seconds, pulling him from the driver's seat and throwing him to the ground. He yelled for help, but the cries simply echoed down the road. They tied him up and ransacked his caravan, taking those valuables most easily carried, and disappeared into the trees as quickly as they'd come. One of them, however, remained, lit a torch, and walked over to the bound driver. He untied him. Handing the torch to the driver, the assailant said, "Torches cost money, and it pays to travel in the light." And then he disappeared into the woods. The driver climbed back to his seat and saw as the torches at both outposts were lit anew. He nudged his horses forward. As he passed the next outpost, the guard waved at him and smiled as if nothing had been amiss, saying, "Travel in the light." Each outpost he passed, a guard waved and said the same: "Travel in the light." By the time he had reached the city at the end of the road, the message was clear. While the driver suffered a small monetary loss from his stolen goods, the story he told and the subsequent understanding which spread among the merchants was immeasurable. The merchants, without complaint, now all paid to travel the road, and their cargo reached its destination unmolested. In the rare occasion when the thieves made off with goods, Torin refunded his fee to the merchant, and in some case, even reimbursed a part of their losses. Business was that good.
An interesting tale, wouldn't you agree? Next up, we have By Night, J.N. Childs.
The most happy. I visit her once a year. I pay my tribute by trudging through the spirits of those who fell upon that cursed green. I disregard their pleas to acknowledge them with a look or a word. I brush off the appeals for absolution and the strident claims of innocence. Their bloody hands grab at my wrist, passing through like razor blades that respect neither flesh nor bone. Their souls, black with sin, beg for mercy, for love wasted, for treasons unaccomplished, and for crimes revealed. I feel and see those who were invisible for so long, who beg for me to recognize them. I do not pause for their prayers. Their needs are not mine to fill. She always sits on the front pew, in the view of the stone the church placed for her the year the renovations happened. That year, she was pleased. Her dark eyes were not pooling abyss, but alive in ways death stole from her centuries before. She pointed, the corners of her mouth pulled up into a smile, and whispered with the same fevered pitch her lesser courtesans used in the courtyard. She said he must have loved her. He must have remembered her, despite the fact that a different woman lay by his side. While my poet's heart usually feasted on the delicacies of human grief, I could not tell her that he forgot her centuries ago. He wrote her away before she was even dead. In less eventful years, she appeared as the flashing creature that once so captivated my heart. Her inky eyes promising hidden pleasures, and her sharp tongue leaving a lash of wonder on my soul. At other times, she was the resigned matron stuck in the moment when becoming his struck her soul like a wasting disease. Tonight, however, she examines her marker quietly, neither young nor old, neither excited nor conciliatory. She is the girl who stood on the precipice of her potential, of what she could be if she played games with deadly rewards. "I thought you wouldn't come," she whispers, yet her voice echoes within the cathedral. Her slight form fills the room, as though her being seeks out the very corners, prying secrets from the stones. Long ago, some thought her a witch for the small bit of feminine magic, but that particular trespass was not among her crimes. Those things she claimed and owned, if even briefly, she captured with the might of a tempest. She conquered them with the unexpected strikingness of her personality and her French charms. They were legitimate spoils. I thought it was a greater magic that he would have become disenchanted, that a man who found his greatest pleasure in the worthy hunt chose a more placid woman to fill his needs. Why would I not? My voice cannot fill this room. Even in life, I never had her presence or abilities. Men grow tired over the years. They find greater loves to replace those which were only good. They capitulate. It is the weakness of your sex. The eyes, which so carefully examined her final resting place, now rest on me, and I am uncomfortable under the heaviness of her gaze. She is unreal, a remnant made stronger by the capricious nature and ferocious will that was destroyed neither by betrayal nor blade. Along with the rooms, she expands her presence into darker places in other souls. I fear what she knows, what she learns while she waits beneath the cold marble tiles. She observes while the world moves on, still playing a vicious game with rules she sharpened on the skin and nerves of courtesans, dukes, and kings. Where would I ever find someone like you? My words cause her to turn her head back to the stone, a smirk battling a frown over her lips. There's a heavier weight between those words. Once they were a proclamation of my love, Now they are the curse that binds her to this place and chains me to mine. They are an acknowledgement that I am just as damned as her, and the redemption is beyond the haunts of the Tower Green. I avoided the scaffold meant for me. I laid out 100 lies and platitudes, playing upon political connections and family in order to keep my head where I most preferred it. I took my adoration, love, and honor, packaging it away so I lived while she died. I called her a witch in order to remain in my skin, but she was not a sorceress. The centuries old curse that would have been hers to place on my soul had she that power. From her cell, I witnessed her final aimed shot at him before her head rolled across the scaffold. I saw as a cloaked figure left the throngs of the screaming and excitement, terror, or sorrow. When the linen and dust of that dark thing cornered me in my prison, her mother was beneath the hood. The old woman crouched before me, pulling my chin to hers until our lips touched. She smiled against me, running the other hand down the side of my face as though she were a lover instead of a hag. She whispered through broken and gritted teeth, "What was lost to me, thee must return." Though my soul withered when her breath touched mine, I thought those words were nothing more than a bothersome sting when compared to the loss of the woman who died for them. Once I died, I understood the shards of that old creature's magic buried themselves far more deeply than simple words aimed to pebble a soul with inconvenient regret. When I awoke under the grounds of the Abbey, I frantically clawed and beat at the stone of my tomb with the fear I was buried alive. Hours later, exhausted from pushing against the weight of granite and stale air, I took an inventory created with every sense that sight denied to me: the musk of decayed fabric, the clicks of skittering legs, and the sharp edges and soft squish of accumulated debris. Time enough had passed to rot away whatever man I had been, replaced by something cold and dead, the remnants of a mother's agonized fury. Nothing terrified me more, a man who created his fate on the twist and turn of emotion spun into words, than laying supine underneath the world. Memory was the marrow in my bones. I faced death once, digging my way out from under it by throwing my hopes of passion and romance into piles of refuse. I thought that was easier than dying for them. I thought crowding every moment after my betrayal with the sensation of women, vices, and sins would make me forget how it felt when she touched me. Those memories were insufferable in the dark of my tomb, burning in my bones until I thought I would burn to ash from the fever of them. In fractional inches at a time, in convulsions that would have torn me apart if I could die, I escaped from the stone. The shadow of the cathedral fell over me, as though a cassock to shield my crouching, filthy, and naked body. An older man stopped in his task of moving books from one table to another, as though his stillness would keep me from being able to see him. He ended that game by finally placing the book in his hands to the table. In a voice that trembled with each syllable, he called me the devil and told me I had no power there, no place anywhere really, and that I should leave and take along whatever magic made me. I stumbled into the day, and the sunlight and fresh air felt as though 1,000 needles pressed into me at once. Every movement was pain, every movement dead muscle scraping across disintegrating bone. I went to the city, and even with its sickness and filth and the overwhelming sense of loss I felt every time I passed into it, I remembered it was a place. I felt as though all my parts were empowered, even as later events stripped me of this notion. I hoped I could push away the cold of my tome and recreate myself, forget the maddening dirge I sang beneath the earth. So I whispered sweet poetry against still warm skin. I kissed lips inflamed with need and desire. I let the lights and sounds of the modern age pulse beneath me, but not inside me. My funeral song filled me, leaving no room for anything but the cold of death. One night, my uninspired ink blotched pages spread out before me as though a marred canvas. I remembered her. I felt a twitch of something like heat beneath my ribs. She was the hottest fire to ever burn me, and my need to be close to her bones, eclipsed all other thoughts. There was no marker then, but I knew where they buried her. I wept over a grave a dozen times before he sent me back to my country life, jealous that I loved too well. This time, I placed my forehead on the cool floor, racked with tears that would not come. I laid there for hours until I felt her presence and her overwhelming sensuality warming the place where her bones rotted. She placed her tiny hand firmly on the back of my neck, the gesture of one familiar with one another, and I heard her laugh, deep, throaty, genuine. For the first time in centuries, I was content. Years pass since then. Even in her presence, seeking to be fulfilled, I contemplate the words of her mother's curse. I can never return the thing I had taken. I murdered her with my words, and my soul is bound here by her violent death, seldomly capable of pulling herself into being. I can never otherwise find peace in her, and I cannot stay. Alive enough as I am still an outsider among the specters and haunts of this dark place. There is no respite, only the knowledge I deprived myself of solace, that I was damned just as I damned her. When she replies to my question, where on earth is there someone like her, the venomous fangs of her words bite me. She has always been a monster in some way, once a siren and a fury of verbal talons, now a vengeful geist. I flinch at the reminder that whatever comfort she offers is tainted with her agony. There is no warmth in her voice, and her flirtatious nature becomes frigid. I know now how he must have felt, to be so great and so small at once. I feel how he must have suffered under the spell of her personality, from burning under her need to dying of her frostbite. She responds, "No, my dear sir, I don't suppose you ever will." I draw back from the cold of her words and the chill of her breath, touching my lips where a sheen of fine ice formed from the moisture in the air. The specters screech, their songs of death and innocence shrill. She looks over her shoulder, her dark hair picking up figments of the light in the hours of dawn. Day is coming, I respond to her unasked question. We know each other too well. She stands and the stones show through her skirts. She is less real, and I feel the waves of her intensity ebbing, calming as day breaks. She sobs, placing her disappearing hands over her now frail features. She collapses on the stones of her grave, and those miseries that shake her spirit would have racked her bones. She prays in French until the light reaches the steps of the cathedral. Will we never be free from this place? She cries brokenly. 500 years of time cannot mute her agony or her misery. When she looks at me for her answer, only the pale shimmer of her cheek remains, a ghostly tear glistening on her face. I shake my head as sunlight obliterates the last outline of her. There's a lightness in the air, one that speaks to her absence. I bow low until my cold cheek touches the cool stone under which she lays. My whisper couldn't be heard by the deafest ears, for I have no place or power here, in any place in which she is not by my side. Never.
And they will never be free from that place. But let's move on to the next tale. Next, we have Caroline and Megan.
Hi, folks. Before we begin, we would like to issue a strong content warning for violence against women, physical and emotional abuse, and also misgendering and transphobia. So if any of those things bother you, please do not continue to watch.
This is your moment.
This is the moment.
This is it.
To decide not to.
Yeah. You try to gasp, but you just keep sucking more air into your lungs. They never feel full. You can't stand up straight. You tumble, slip around in what you realize is your own blood. You end up hitting the kitchen floor hard, face up. You can't believe this. This can't be happening. You can't fucking believe this. You realize with a cold, growing dread that this is it. There's no coming back from this. This is how you die. It feels as if a ball of ice is forming in your belly, growing bigger and bigger, colder and colder. You keep sucking for air, gasping, but no, you're going to bleed to death. Blackness starts to creep into the corners of your vision and your limbs get heavy. Your heart only beats faster and faster. You're not ready. You lie still and you remember. You remember what got you here.
Max and June met at a speed dating event. It seemed like a perfect fit. They were both young, attractive, and eager for attention. They had undeniable chemistry from the minute they saw each other.
So what kind of board games do you like?
I like social deduction board games, that kind of thing. Well, that's a wheeling and dealing.
Like Catan or Risk. You like Risk?
Risk is not a bad game, but no, I mean more like Werewolf.
Werewolf?
Yeah, it's a game you played in a group of people, and someone's the werewolf, and someone's a detective, and then other people are villagers. And every night, the town goes to sleep, and the werewolf kills someone. And the next morning, they wake up, and then they have to try to figure out who the werewolf is. And, yeah, it's just fun.
So do you like being the werewolf?
Yeah, of course. That's the best role. Yeah, no, my strategy is if I'm the werewolf, I immediately tell everyone that I'm the detective. And
does that usually work?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It sows chaos and confusion at the very least.
Are you from around here? Do you have any family?
Yeah, I have a brother and a sister nearby. It's cute.
Thanks.
What about you? Family in the area?
No, my mom used to live around here, but she's gone.
Oh, gone.
Like gone.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So, do you have any other friends or family around?
No, I mean a couple friends, but it's mostly just me.
Oh, so if we started dating, I'd have you all to myself.
I guess you could say that.
What do you say we get out of here?
Oh, you mean like instead of dating?
Yeah, I mean...
Okay, I just have to text my friend to let him know that I'm going out with somebody. It's like a thing that we do.
All right, sure.
Yeah, no worries. Are you sure you don't mind just like leaving all this?
I want to take you out. What's your friend's name?
Nick.
Nick.
Yeah, they've known me since college. They were really helpful when my mom was like sick and stuff, and they actually told me I should come tonight to speed dating. So.
Oh, sounds like a smart friend.
Yeah, but I did tell him I'd let him know if I was going home with anybody cool. So.
Oh, so we're going home together.
Well, I mean, we're leaving here together.
Hey, no complaints. Let's get out of here.
All right. Yeah, let's go.
All right.
They were exclusive almost immediately. Their romance was a whirlwind of passion, an Instagrammable waltz to the motions of falling deeper and deeper into love. Everything seemed perfect. A year later, they moved in together.
June, hey, can you help me, please?
Just one sec, I really need to answer this text.
Okay, but we are in the process of moving in together, and I'm carrying all the boxes, and you're doing nothing.
No, but I told you, Nick's mom just went back into the hospital, and I didn't answer him before the house.
Yeah, Nick's got another fucking crisis. I get it. Yeah, no, never mind the fact that we are in the middle of moving in together. This is a huge step in our relationship, and I feel like you're not even here. You're just like talking to Nick. Again,
listen,
what is his problem this time?
Their mom is in the hospital.
Oh, you know what? Nick constantly has some fucking crisis going on. It's always like, oh, something about my gender this, and like my friend has this issue. Like everything is always a fucking crisis with Nick. And you are always distracted by Nick's bullshit.
I know Nick can be like a little much, but that's not like...
No, Nick's more than a little much. Nick is like toxic for you. I don't understand how you don't see this. He's terrible.
They're not terrible. They're just, they're going through a lot right now. And I'm just trying to be supportive.
Whatever.
Listen, I'll put my phone down and I'll help, okay? Like, I'll talk to them later.
Fine.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Listen, I'm not mad at you. It's just Nick. I worry about the way that Nick's just a lot. And I just worry about the relationship. And I think you should think about it more. Just consider.
Okay, I'll think about it.
I love you.
I love you too, Max.
As Max and June's relationship went on, June found herself more and more isolated from her friends and family. When she did go out, Max was there, like a loyal shadow. Nick voiced concerns, but June always brushed them off. The more Nick worried, the more Max seemed to hate them. Soon it wasn't worth the trouble. It was easier just to stay in. Everything with Max was going so well. A year after they first moved in together, he proposed, and June said yes. What are you doing?
I just got a text from Nick. I guess his mom is like really not doing well. They're thinking about putting her in hospice.
You got a text from Nick? Like, I
just got it.
I thought we had an agreement about this.
Well, we do. I just got it. I mean, you asked and I told you.
We discussed this. We discussed that Nick, you agreed. You said that you understood that Nick was bad for you and that the whole relationship was toxic and that you weren't going to spend time with him anymore. Like you specifically told me, you promised me.
I didn't promise I wouldn't ever talk to him. I said I would.
What is it this time?
I told you his mom is dying. I'm sorry, Max. Listen, you need to, like, I have to be there for Nick. He was there for me, you know? Like, they've always taken care of me in situations like this.
I don't understand why you're trying to destroy our relationship.
I'm not trying to destroy our relationship.
Why do you constantly do this? You constantly put us into these situations where all I'm trying to do is take care of us, provide for us, make sure that we have nice things. Is this not a nice apartment? Like, is this not enough for you? Like, I'm not enough for you? No, you have to have Nick on the side too? Like, you can't just...
You're enough. Don't talk like this. I hate when you talk like this stupid.
Well, you're being stupid.
I'm not.
Yes, you are. You
Nick call me stupid.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh my God. God, June, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. No. I that'll never happen again. That will never happen again. I swear. God, what's wrong with me?
It's okay.
Oh my God, what's wrong with me?
It's okay. It won't happen again, right?
No, it's not okay. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't know what came over me. It's just I get so angry when it comes to Nick, and I'm so sorry. I love you so much.
I know. I love you too, Max. He said it wouldn't happen again, and she believed him. A year went by. She believed him every time. Until today. The day everything changed. June was cutting up onions, making breakfast in the kitchen when Max walked in.
Hey, good morning. Smells good. What you making?
Just omelets. Good morning.
Just omelets.
Yeah, you like omelets, right?
Yeah, I like omelets. Yeah.
Is something wrong?
Should something be wrong?
No.
So, I've been doing most of the planning for our wedding.
Yeah.
So I was going through all the RSVPs to start doing the seating chart. We need to have a discussion.
A discussion about what?
About this. It's an RSVP from Nick.
And a +1, right?
What do you think you're doing? Like, do you not understand? Like, we discussed this. We had a talk about this. You agreed.
I thought you said that he But he could still come. I'm sorry, Max.
No, we discussed this. You wanted him to be in the wedding party, and I told you I wasn't comfortable with that.
And I said that he wouldn't be, and I thought that this. I'm sorry.
You just like went behind my back, and you did this anyway.
Max, don't get angry.
Like, don't get angry. Like, don't get angry about this. Like, we discussed this.
I know.
What the fuck is wrong with you? You constantly. It's every single fucking time with Nick. I think that there's something wrong with your fucking brain. There's something wrong with you, June.
I'm sorry, Max. I'm sorry.
You should be.
Max's eyes raged with fire as he grabbed June by the shoulders and started to hit her. She screamed for him to stop, but he wouldn't. He pushed her back against the kitchen counter. She threw her hands back, reaching, desperate, searching for anything to turn the tables, to get him off of her, to get away. Her hand found the knife, and she had never felt more certain in her entire life. She had never been so scared. Her arm knew what to do before her brain told it. She brought it up and down in one fast hack, then tore the cleaver free from the side of his neck and swung a second time, for good measure. She had never been so scared.
You try to gasp, but you can barely suck air into your lungs. You stumble, slip around in what you realize is your own blood, losing your footing and hitting the kitchen floor, hard, face up. You can't believe this is happening. You realize with a sudden, cold, sinking feeling that this is it. There's no coming back from this. This is how you die. You're going to bleed to death. Blackness starts to creep into the corners of your vision, and the fire in you fades. You lie still, and you remember. You remember what got you here.
Hi, I'm Dylan with Larp. We appreciate you taking time out of your evening to listen to our scary stories. If you guys enjoyed a particular story, you'd probably enjoy an event that they run. We're going to give them a few minutes to talk about who they are, what they do, and how to connect with them. Everyone's going to get about 30 seconds to 45 seconds, kind of just plug yourself, give some basic insight on what you do, what events you guys got coming up. And Phlegma Mysteries, Alexandra, we'll start with you.
Crap, you caught me by surprise. Thank you guys for listening. We are Flame of Mysteries. We did the Tale from Maelstrom Mansion. We are super excited to announce that we are actually going to be returning to Maelstrom Mansion in a sense. We're going to be running Maelstrom Masquerade, a 1700s Venetian set game using Lovecraftian lore. And it's going to be in the fall of 2021. We'll be back at the Mansions on 5th in Pittsburgh where we ran Maelstrom Mansion. It'll be limited to 40 tickets, so we're going to open it up to Flame of Mysteries players first and then public. Next year, Halloween weekend, we actually have a resort booked in the Outer Banks in North Carolina. We're running Stormwrecked, a pirate LARP. Play on one of 3 teams, and that is a one-shot. So if you like pirates, if you want to solve some mysteries, solve some puzzles, and try to escape the cursed island of Calypso before her curse hits you, check out our website, www.stormwrecked.com. And again, Maelstrom Masquerade, that is going to be our event after that. That is www.maelstrommasquerade.com. Thanks so much for listening. We had a blast, and we hope to do it again.
Good. Okay. That was a really good one. Talk to the purpose there. All right. Let's go to. Yeah. So Natasha actually wasn't able to make it from Hanging Lantern, so I actually have a little thing to read from her. The Hanging Lantern team has done some moving across the country this year. Running in horror, they look forward to regrouping and planning some new events to watch for in 2020. If you guys aren't sure, that was the second recorded one that we watched. Then we'll move on to Geek Initiative, Tara Clapper.
Hi, my name is Tara Clapper, and I run the Geek Initiative LARPs. I am mostly known for doing digital LARPs, including Chariot, which is our sci-fi LARP. We've been running that pretty continuously for about 2 years, and we currently have tickets on sale for a Chariot LARP adventure that takes place in the 1960s. That adventure is a prelude to an event happening on the last weekend of August in 2020 in Virginia, where we will explore more of the Chariot universe with that retro space age sci-fi theme. Also, there are aliens. If you want to find out more about the Geek Initiative LARPs and digital LARPing in general, it's very affordable and accessible. You can learn more at facebook.com/chariotlarp.
All right, and then we're gonna go to High Level Games, Josh Heath. Oh wait, actually, I think he has stepped out. But I believe if you wanted to check his events out, you can go to highlevelgames.com. Maybe production, something like that. I'll figure that out by the end. All right, and we'll move on to Fandom Legacy / Origin with Zach Durazo and Mary Doolittle.
How's it going, guys? My name's Zach Durazo. This is Mary Doolittle. We did the Night Inquisitor looking through the wreckage of the town earlier. We wanted to tell you guys about 2 events that we've got coming up. The first one being Fandom Legacy Con. It's going to be March 6th through 8th here in Dallas, Texas. And it is going to be an absolute blast. We're planning on having all kinds of LARP stuff going on, all kinds of storytelling, all kinds of interactive experiences. And that's really what this convention is all about. It's multi-fandom, got a little bit to appeal to everybody. We really want to see you guys there. The second bit is Origin LARP. And I believe that's where Dylan and Terry Crew got their start. It's a high fantasy LARP that is just now coming out of playtest phase. It's been playtesting for about 3 years now to get the rule system as absolutely crystal clear and as perfect as it can be. And we will be starting that up actually at Fandom Legacy Con. We're going to be running a huge dungeon there. And then later on that month, we're actually going to be holding our first non-playtest event. So once again, March 6th through 8th, Fandom Legacy Con. We'd love to see you all there. I hope you guys like the story, and thank you for attending. I'm going to smile at the camera now.
Man, he switched off a second too late. But Zach was smiling at the camera. All right, and then we'll move on to Lost Colonies with Marquis Tyrell.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marquise. I am a storyteller with Lost Colonies. We are an exploration, discovery, and slice of life based LARP. Highly consent-based, a mixture of both boffer and parlor. If you are completely against combat, there is definitely a story for you here. If you really like combat, there's also a story for you here. We are exploring the idea of creating a new world, trying very, very, very much with sensitivity writers steering us away from the more problematic side of colonization and learning to settle a land that doesn't actually have, that we're not taking away from other people. Highly inclusive. There is something in this LARP for anyone of any particular kind of background, especially different ethnic backgrounds. They're very, very keen on making sure that you have a place here to make the character that feels right for you. And yeah, I work with a really great team of people, and our next event is actually November 15th. So 3 weeks, hooray. And yeah, I definitely hope to see some new faces from this, and I hope you really enjoyed the story that is completely made up. It is not canon, but was just created for this to be really spooky. But I really enjoyed this experience, and I hope to see people there.
Awesome. And then we'll be moving to Entropic Endeavors with Erica Skirpan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erica Skirpin. I'm the CEO and president of Entropic Endeavors. We're a LARP production company, and our first game has been Velvet Noir. It is set in the 1920s US about alternate-ish American history, and it's a game about racism and oppression and sexism and exploring the very real awful things that happened in America during the 1920s, which firmly echo what we are seeing in America today. My goal in design, I'm the lead designer for this game, was to hire several disenfranchised writers and minority writers to tell stories about their cultures and what they wanted to touch on with their cultures historically, and then give them money to tell stories in LARP. So we've had 3 events so far. They've all been great. Our next is February 21st to the 23rd. I could be wrong about that. Look at www.entropicendeavors.com. So that's our website, entropicendeavors.com. I am also the director for Dead Legends, which is a Weird West LARP, which is run out of Eastern Pennsylvania. So you can also go to deadlegendslarp.com if you're more interested in boffer stuff. Velvet Noir is completely freeform. There's no stats. It's all cooperative, consent negotiated combat. And Dead Legends is a little more American campaign based. And the story that you heard tonight was from last Velvet Noir game. All of it absolutely happened. The lady federal agent was killed and fed to the darkness in the first game, and she came back in horrific ways last game. And I have on my Facebook some of the photos of the makeup job, which Talcat helped us do for that horrific NPC. So thanks to all my staff, and thank you all for listening.
Good. Marquise wanted everyone to know that if you're more interested in Lost Colonies, he forgot to add the website, which is lostcolonieslarp.com. If you're more interested, you can go there, find out a little more about that. And after that, we will move to LARP Link with Luke Mahar.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for listening. First off, thanks LARP for throwing this together. Awesome evening. I thought it was fantastic just to be a audience member, never mind being a participant. So I think everybody did a really cool job. I loved all the different stories and genres that got covered. So that was awesome. Thanks for throwing this together and including us. We run Crux LARP. It's a high fantasy medieval style LARP. That story that I told about the entrepreneurial businessman is some of the background story for our crafting stuff that we do in the game. And but there's also magic, combat, nobility, government struggle, and a bunch of conflict among all the different classes and stuff in the game. So if you're interested in that, it's cruxlarp.com, CRUX larp.com. And thanks for having us. We had a great time.
Awesome. And then we're going to move on to Ryan Hart with Sinking Ship.
Hi, everybody. It's Ryan. I'm with Sinking Ship Creations. I'm in the last stages of prep for our Destination LARP Scapegoat. So forgive me if I'm a little bit scatterbrained. I've actually been throwing up our last lore update on our Discord. We do a whole bunch of different LARP that combines immersive theater with LARP, as well as more traditional LARP aspects. I worked with a lot of people here before. And hard to see past the next 2 weeks, but in 2020, we do have a couple things coming up. I'll personally be at the Smoke in London putting up Commodity, which is a smaller LARP. We'll probably have a few things going on at Intercon. I'm bringing Mournful Their Move. We have a lot of cool stuff that we're planning for New York City that will leave it. But I do want to make a plug for next Halloween 2020. We're doing a relatively small exclusive. It's probably going to be 40 to 60 people. LARP, we have the Showboat Hotel in Atlantic City booked. So if any of you have ever been there before, it's super creepy. I just started talking about design stuff. I can say right now the one thing I'm sure of, it will not be for what we would call the faint of heart. It will definitely be a horror love. So yeah, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. SpookyShipCreations.com, and if you're interested, you can always go and look and see updates about Scapegoat LARP on Facebook.
Awesome. And then we're going to go to J.N. Childs, who will be telling us about both By Night and Mighty Narwhal, whose separate representative was not able to make it.
Hi, my name is Jayan Childs. I'm a horror writer that works for both By Night Studios and Mighty Narwhal Productions. If you want to check out my horror writing, you can find my Facebook at j.childs hashtag, or not hashtag, hyphen biddle. By Night Studios is going to be working on a V2, so Vampire 2, and we also are working on Changeling the Dreaming currently. An event that I'm personally working on is for for Mighty Narwhal, excuse me, which can be found at www.mightynarwhal.com. And it's called Cassiopeia. It's going to be a space LARP that is based on Dune and Firefly and most heavily on Event Horizon. So it's going to question existence, the nature of space exploration, and a lot of internal and external horror. That'll be coming out in the Mora core book, which should hit in 2020. And we're also having an event in June of 2020, a 3-day immersive event on a really fantastic site that includes a lot of old ruins for Cassiopeia. And that will be a 100-person plus LARP. Thanks.
Awesome. And then the last one is Incantrix, which was Caroline and Megan.
Hello, my name is Caroline Murphy.
I'm Megan. Hi.
And we are both writers for Incantrix Productions. We write for other companies as well. You can find more about Incantrix Productions at incantrixproductions.com. You can find more of my work at carolineamurphy.com. And Meg is an up-and-coming writer in the Boston area and is I don't know, what do you want to say about yourself?
You'll see me around.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then be sure to check out our website at larp.com, our Facebook page, search for LARP and upcoming events, and be sure to look out for new articles, reviews. Have a great night.
All right, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful show, and thank you for coming over to Penny for a Tale. Please make sure to check out the rest of the channel. We do a lot of tabletop role-playing games with a focus on horror, the dark, and the deep, stuff like that. So if you're ever around town, feel free to check out Penny for a Tale. We have a website. You can find that right below here. If you're checking out on YouTube, you can find everyone's information right below on the details. If you're on podcast, the same place. Etc., etc. You will always be able to find these people's websites where you will see this video. So make sure to check out their stuff, attend their events, and tell me how it was. I'd be really interested to see the reception and what you guys thought of it. So yeah, definitely want to thank everyone for such a wonderful night, and everyone have a happy Halloween. Bye.